Well, okay, the story of the heavenly book is a common theme in the Enoch materials. We read where the angel Uriel showed Enoch the heavenly tablets, and he told him to read their content and note everything that they contained. Enoch then recounted to his children, which I have learned from the words of the holy angels, and have understood to be written on the heavenly tablets. He even later described what he saw on the heavenly tablets. Now, according to the Zohar, in Genesis 2:17a, Rabbi Judah once fell asleep, and he dreamt that he saw the four wings outstretched, and Rabbi Simeon ascended on them with the scroll of the law, and also with all manner of books containing hidden expositions and agadods. What happened was, they all ascended to heaven. This is so fascinating. They all ascended to heaven, and they were lost from his view. These books actually rose up into the heavens. And Ishmael could no longer see them, or Simeon could no longer see them. They were lost from his view. And then when he woke, he said, "Verily, since the death of Rabbi Simeon, wisdom has departed from the earth. Alas for the generation that has lost this precious jewel, which used it to illuminate it, and on which the higher and lower beings were supported." Now that's quite a dream of the heavenly books, the heavenly tablets. A 2nd century document, the Papyrus Oxyrhynchus, from Oxyrhynchus, Egypt, contains the story of the Greek writer Isidore. And Isidore put off for some time the translation into Greek of an Egyptian book which he possessed, describing the healing god Asclepius. And after a few years, Isidore fell gravely ill, and the story says that as he lay asleep one night, Asclepius appeared to him in a dream. He was wearing a shining robe. This reminds us of Lehi's vision, doesn't it? He was wearing a shiny robe and carrying a book in his left hand. And when this apparition disappeared, Isidore understood that he must continue the translation of his work, and so he continued translating his work. This is very similar to the other Hermetic literature that examines the hidden records. The tradition describes various individuals who are said to have experienced a vision. And in this vision they receive a book with the admonition to translate the book. And it's a book of arcane lore from an old man. It's often said to be seated on the old man is seated on a golden throne. And among those who received the book are Belinus, Apollonius, and Thessalus. The latter, like Isidore, described the giver of the book as the god Asclepius, known to the Egyptians as Imhotep. So this is definitely the theme of the heavens coming down and presenting the literatures to the earthly prophets and translators so that they can carry on the tradition. It's an absolutely beautiful theme that has echoes and reverberations all throughout the entire process of our own Book of Mormon. It's a fascinating thing. I'll have to grab my hat again. I'm going to quit wearing it, man. It's too windy today. It's cold. Brr. Now, it's interesting that there are a number of records and stories that describe the idea of an angel delivering a heavenly book or a long-lost earthly book to a mortal. And the best known, of course, probably is that of Muhammad, who declared that the angel Gabriel presented him with a book to read from. The book is called the Quran, from the Arabic verb meaning to read. Interestingly, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls that Tuetnus discusses here, the 4Q529, begins with the claim that it contains the words of the book which Michael spoke to the angels of God. Isn't that interesting? Even the Dead Sea Scrolls have this theme of the heavenly books. Hippolytus noted that the Elkosites, the earliest Jewish Christian sect, told of a book delivered by a female angel of enormous stature to their founder, one Elkosai, or Alcibiades. According to Eusebius, Origen merely noted that the book had fallen from heaven in Eusebius' ecclesiastical history. This would place it in the category of the letters from heaven. And in a similar story, another early Christian person, Mani, who founded the Manichaean religion, he claimed that he received the news contained in the books that he wrote from an angel named Taum. So this theme of receiving records, oh, that's the third time's a charm, I'm going to leave it off. The theme of receiving records from the heavenly beings in order to help humanity understand both what is going on in heaven and on earth is a very prominent theme in antiquity. In one of the texts discovered at Nag Hammadi in 1945, an angel instructed a man named Allogenes. He said, "Write down the things that I shall tell you, and of which I shall remind you, for the sake of those who are worthily to come after you." So it's going to be a record that is written down by one and preserved by him for later generations. I mean, this is precisely the Book of Mormon theme. This is beautiful. "And you will leave the book upon a mountain, and you will adjure the guardian. Come, dreadful one." There's a guardian of the books. Isn't that interesting thing? "And after he said these things, he separated from me, but I was full of joy. And I wrote this book which was appointed for me, my son Mesos, in order that I might disclose to you the things that were proclaimed before me in my presence." So you notice this is a father receiving instruction from the heavens and handing on down the records to his son. What's that sound like? Mormon and Moroni, doesn't it? I mean, Alma and Alma the Younger. The theme stretches throughout the entire course of Book of Mormon history. It's also found in the legends, the stories, the themes, and the scriptures from antiquity as well. That's utterly, beautifully fascinating, isn't it? In another one of the Nag Hammadi texts, in the Acts of Peter and the 12 Apostles, we read where Peter describes how he encountered a man wearing a cloth bound around his waist and a golden belt girded it. Also a napkin was tied over his chest, extending over his shoulders and covering his head and his hands. It's fascinating how Peter claims, "I was staring at the man because he was beautiful in his form and his stature. There were 4 parts of his body that I saw, the sole of his feet, a part of his chest, and the palms of his hands and his visage. These things I was able to see. A book cover like those of my books was in his left hand." Very interesting how he says a staff of styrax wood was in his right hand. Now listen to how Peter describes this person. The golden belt is known to have been worn by Jesus, incidentally, in the heavenly temple, Revelation 1:13. And the shape of the man's clothing allowed him to see the same body parts that Joseph Smith saw when the angel Moroni appeared to him about the Book of Mormon. That's in Joseph Smith History 1:31. This man initially told Peter that his name was Lithargoel. Now listen to this. The interpretation of the name of this heavenly man that Peter saw, who was carrying a book with him, the interpretation is light, a gazelle-like stone, perhaps referring to the interpreter as the Urim and Thummim. So now we have books presented by heavenly beings involving light and stones, possibly the Urim and Thummim. And it was by these stones, interestingly enough, that the ancient document can be translated. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. Ultimately, the man removed the covering on his head and revealed himself to be Jesus to Peter. He then gave the apostles sacred relics, an unguent box and a pouch or a bag containing medicine with which they were to heal the people of the city. In the Mandaic Haran Gawata, Ruha Shurbish, the wife of Adonai, and this is the same Adonai term that is applied to Jehovah in the Old Testament, interestingly enough, disguised as Hibel Ziwa, came to the Nasorian, the Mandean Kikil. And here's what she said: "I, Hibel Ziwa, have brought parchment and reed pen, so write a root of life." Isn't that fascinating imagery? Write a root of life and a saying and a mystery, and disseminate them forth and act in accordance with them. So Kikil brought parchment and a reed pen and wrote down the text and spread it about, disseminated it. After her departure, Kikil recanted, and she burned the writings and gave instructions for others to do the same, but the Jews refused to destroy the writings. The Mandean considered these books, therefore, to be false. Isn't that fascinating?